Well, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to the channel. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. I suppose I should go into the essentials of doing this video, which is that I'm Anna, this is my channel. I create content, and the purpose behind it is part of expanding our knowledge, understanding, awareness, not just of the crystals from a metaphysical perspective, but also to improve options for us when we're buying crystals. Now, to give you, before I go into the content, I want to say this particular crystal has been very unsettling for me. It's actually really thrown me off from a metaphysical perspective, and I'll talk about that later in the video. But if you're new to the channel, just letting you know that I put timing stamps in the description so that you can jump to the areas of interest for you. Because otherwise it can be a very long video, especially if I go down the rabbit warren and start talking about my experiences. Now, fair warning for you as well, I stop and start at different times. I do transcripts, but I can deviate along the process as things come to mind for me. And I also have a little dog that can be quite disruptive at times, but I'll push on through it anyway. So just to reiterate, we are talking about the crystal Midnight Lace Obsidian today. Quite a mouthful, and certainly new to my collection, and I bought it because I was prompted by somebody that made a comment on one of my videos, and I thought, well, I've never heard of it, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to give it a go and see how it works for me. So let's take a look at Midnight Lace Obsidian so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So you can see here, it is rather an interesting type crystal. It is naturally forming, but this, just to be clear as well, this is not my piece, but my piece does have the black through it, as well as the transparent or translucent aspects to it as well. Now, what I'm learning is, in the first instance, all of that black is actually black obsidian. So it carries all the properties of black obsidian as well. And where it's the clear and transparent, my part that's got the clarity to it, if you like, or the clearness, translucency, it looks more like smoky quartz to me. And most of the bits that I've seen do look like smoky quartz, but only when you hold it up to the light. So when it's not being held up to the light, it actually just looks black. You really don't see the stripes. I've got my piece beside me as I'm recording. If I hold it up to the light even slightly, I start to see some of that transparency, but when I hold it directly up with the light behind it, I can see the transparency a lot more clearly. And it does have, mine in particular, doesn't have those big lumps of black in it, as we see in this example here, but it does have all of these lacy bits to it. So it's an interesting looking crystal, shall we say. Pretty. Now, when we talk about chakra associations with crystals, well, for the Midnight Lace Obsidian, it's definitely associated with the root or the base the base chakra. Anything that's got the blackness to it tends to be base chakra. Same with the smoky. The smoky quartz is also base chakra. This is about grounding and connection. However, when it comes to Midnight Lace Obsidian, I believe it's actually more than that, because it's kind of got yin-yang aspects to it. So I would say it's also associated with the Earth Star chakra, which, if you don't know much about that, I'm in the process of updating my website to give more explanation of these other chakras that aren't major. You've got your 7 major chakras, as we've got in this image here, but then there's other ones, many chakras, but the other big ones, shall we say, that have an influence on our physical existence include what we call the Earth Star, and that's about connecting to the Earth, the planet, and Mother Earth, nature, that kind of thing. And then we've got the Bindi chakra, which is around about the third eye area. It's in that region, and that's associated with yin and yang. So for me, I would say that Midnight Lace Obsidian is connected to the root, the earth, the crown. Oh, yes, of course, the crown, because when you're talking about grounding to the earth connection and that yin-yang aspect, there is the power of the mind involved with that. And of course, the Bindi chakra. So from an overview perspective, it is supposed to work fairly quickly for people that obviously I wouldn't purchase this unless you were psychologically ready, or I wouldn't work with it unless you're in the right space psychologically to start, because it does work fairly quickly. I would say rapid change. That's kind of debatable as well. I would say you start to feel the influences of it very rapidly, but in my particular instance, I feel that it's been working over days. And of course, I did put it out to the universe that they work with me gently. There's a reason for that. Will I talk about it now? I'm not sure. But either way, from a metaphysical perspective, it's supposed to promote spiritual growth and personal development, as well as be transformative and clear blockages. One of the other attributes is supposed to be finding, I say supposed to be because I'm sure it actually is, about finding your soul purpose and getting a spiritual alignment there with divine will. Promotes psychic development. My perspective, it is links a person to the maid, mother, and crone as well, because I felt the moment I saw it that there was a lunar or a moon connection to it. And of course, that's about wisdom, universal wisdom, and clearly wisdom of the ancients as well. I just want to acknowledge here that the piece that I've got is a palm stone. It's similar to this image here, but it's got more black in it. So anyway, it's a reminder. I feel when we talk about metaphysical, it is a reminder that life is a big picture. It's cyclical. It's got its ups and downs. This is the maid, mother, and crone stuff as well. The tides, the cycles, and letting us know that the lower, when we've got cycles of life, if it's a really big wheel, and you will know this, just look at a bike, somebody riding a bike. The bigger those wheels are, the greater the cycle or the bottoming out. And so it's like, we all have ups and downs in life, and sometimes we have really big lows and we have really big highs. So it's a reminder that the lower the wheel turns or falls, the higher it can be when it turns around and it rotates, because life is balanced. Okay, so when you're at rock bottom, I see it as motivating and inspiring hope that once you've reached rock bottom and you're thinking it can't go any further and all the rest of it, it kind of provides a little bit of hope there. Well, what is there that I can look forward to and expect to, because it's going to be really great, because this rock bottom is basically the most challenging I've ever had. That being said, I think it's really important, and I did put this in my transcripts, to be aware that when we have these really big ups and downs and all the rest of it, and certainly if they're emotional, for people on the outside, it can kind of look a little bit like you're bipolar. So the important thing is, this is what I feel I learned a long time ago, so I'm just sharing a little bit of wisdom with you here, that when we are in perfect balance, life is just a straight line of emotions. And to me, it's very mundane and boring, because I'm one of these people. I like to have a certain amount of ups and downs. I just don't like them to be extremes. I think the more extreme those ups and downs are, it just can be very unsettling. So over the years, I've learned to manage the ups and downs and keep a certain amount of stability, shall we say. I hope that's clear to you. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, I don't know about what's made me uncomfortable is not so much the soul purpose stuff, but it's actually made me stop and really start looking at my life. I've found myself looking at the past, which is the shadow work, of course, bringing the subconscious to the conscious, and in such a way, even questioning my life purpose for right now. Am I on the right track? Am I doing the right thing for me? Is it all going to the divine plan? So that's been really very deep for me. But anyway, I'm going to move on, because I don't want to get stuck talking about myself. So if you're a returning visitor to the channel, you'll know that my thoughts towards Zodiac and crystals is basically, don't worry about it. If you feel drawn to a crystal, then that's the crystal for you. That's the one that you need. However, at the same time, I do acknowledge that there are recommendations by people that there are benefits for certain star signs by using a particular crystal. And in this instance, Midnight Lace Obsidian is recommended for people who are Scorpio, Aries, and Capricorn. But once again, I say, if you're drawn to it, buy it. Maybe that's the problem for me. I wasn't actually drawn to it. I just wanted it because I heard about it. So I'm just acknowledging this image here, which I found to be very odd. It kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the crystals we find up north in the rough. It looks a little bit like tiger eye to some extent. But of course, we're looking at a big slab of it here. And clearly the ones that we're picking up and using for metaphysical use have been sliced, carved, polished, whatever. Anyway, just a little bit of backstory here. I think it's probably the same hardness as black obsidian, which is 5 to 6. So it's got average hardness to it. It's a bit glassy looking, so I haven't tested dropping mine to see whether or not it breaks, but I would imagine the cut always plays a role in how hardy your crystal is as well. I think if it was a tumble, it probably would cope with being dropped on your bathroom floor if you're taking off your bra. With my palm stone that I've got, though, because it's thin, I think it would be more fragile and potentially split if it was dropped. So it's got a little bit of durability, but it's not super durable. As we've discussed anyway, as far as the transparency goes, yes, it is translucent in part and it's opaque in part, because the black stuff is the opaque stuff. You can hold it up to the light, you don't get any sun through it. The clearer aspect, of course, is translucent. You can see right through it. As far as toxicity goes, I really don't know, and I wasn't able to get any information about that. But as far as sources go, where you buy it from, apparently it comes out of Armenia. Although the literature that I found mentioned that there was a small deposit found in Oregon, the USA, but it wasn't deemed to be economically viable to actually source it and sell it on the commercial market. So I guess at this point in time, if you're looking to get it, you would want to know, because I'm not sure if there is false stuff out there, if there's any fake. We'll talk about that in a moment, but the genuine stuff will be out of Armenia. So from a buying perspective, it is considered to be a fairly rare crystal, because obviously there's only one source. Anything that's got a scarcity is going to push the price up. So it's not super cheap. What I have observed, though, is the person that asked me to do a video on Midnight Lace Obsidian, they actually bought some and they sent me some links, and I thought, oh my goodness me, as you do, because the sources that I was provided with were European and, of course, Euro dollars. I'm in Australia, and frankly, our dollar doesn't do very well against the EUD. And for me, I just thought those prices were absolutely exorbitant for a small item. Now, so what I did was I did some research on the local market, and I managed to source what apparently is a very good bit, because it's got a lot of clearness in it. Actually, I should have said the more clear there is in the actual crystal, apparently the stronger the attributes are for this Midnight Lace Obsidian. Anyway, what I've done here is I have put an image of the rough. You can see there that looks completely different to the part that I've got on the mineral slide, but this is still genuine apparently. And I will also make the point too that the person, Ilian, I'm going to mention you here. I don't know if it's Ilya or Ilian actually, but Ilian had sent me photographs of his rough stuff. And to me, it looked completely black, because like I said, if you've got the actual specimen, you only actually see that clarity or those clear lines when you hold it up to the light. So it does look black like that, when, like the rough image I've got here, unless you hold it up to the light and you can see some of the stripes going through it, some of the formation. This donut type image, that's probably much more like the palm stone that I've got. The question mark for the clear midnight, that heart-shaped one, I just don't know if that's genuine, to be honest. I don't know if that's a fake, because it looks way too clear to me, but it might be. It's just something that I saw online. Anyway, what else can I say as far as buying tips go? Look, I think I've covered the fact. Be aware of conversion currency rates, know the size, know the weight, know the freight costs. Don't forget to calculate those in. The bit that I got was very good value, really, because it was on the local market. So postage was, pretty minimal, and currency conversion wasn't an issue either. I'm just looking at my notes here to see what else I can mention. That's pretty well much. That's pretty well it for this slide. So, from a spiritual metaphysical perspective, I'm not going to go into all of this. I'll let you pause the slide as at your convenience and read it, actually, because what I'll do at this point is actually talk about the observations that I've made, and with the observations that Ilian has provided to me. And that is that actually, yes, it does promote the psychic gifts, the opening of them. That certainly it brings that subconscious to the conscious. Now, Elia also said that he found, and this is where it's great to share information, that when he was using the crystal, I hope I've interpreted this right, he found the same issues I did, where in fact, actually, as we bring that subconscious stuff to the conscious, these are the blocks and barriers, these are the memories that we hold within us that have caused us some pain and grief, that we've locked down, pushed down, and basically tried to get on with our lives about. But the fact is that we have to actually heal that pain to allow the blockage to be removed, if you like. So this is kind of how it works. So because I'm older, I think that's what it is. Ilya, I've learned today, is quite a young person, but obviously has their own experiences of trauma. It's so common, I guess, and prevalent these days. Me being older, because I'm a grandmother now, it's how deep do you want to deep? I come from a family of intergenerational trauma. Through my mother had her own traumas. They then, of course, when you talk about family patterns, they are revisited on the children. Until we actually go and do some inner work, shall we say, we can quite often perpetrate or perpetuate those cycles on our own children. Now, in many ways, I'm grateful that I've managed to break some cycles. However, there are things in my life that I have found, because I'm getting flooded by memories at the moment, where I look back and I think, I still have an emotional response to that stuff. Some of it was extremely painful. Some of it created a lot of anger. Right now, though, when I look back and, I'd forgotten about a lot of this stuff. And there's a level of sadness associated and attached to those memories. But then there also becomes this level of acceptance and recognition that, you know what, there was a part of me that actually initially responded to some of this stuff, these memories that were coming up, and thinking, that's really sad. It's really sad that these things happen, because they didn't need to happen, because that is a normal human response, especially when you're talking about trauma and really horrendous situations. But then I would say the next stage of acknowledging these memories and seeing them is about going into that spiritual perspective, where there is an acknowledgement that actually we had a divine plan. And I'm still processing this little bit as it comes up, where it's like, okay, well, if they chose this journey, then that part must have been pivotal to their divine plan, in which case me turning around and saying things like, well, it's really sad that happened. I'm sort of thinking, how do I actually turn that around now and build a positive out of it? Which could be, I really admire those people for being able to survive those horrendous, difficult situations, the close family members, and to rise above that, because clearly they have a lot of inner strength, that kind of thing. I have to respect the fact that they chose the pathways that they did as well. And clearly I chose to be part of that, even if it's part of being, if my part was to be an observer. I don't know, it's all a little bit muddy and confusing for me right now. So you'll see where I'm going with this. So this is one of the reasons why I would say, look, if you're going to work with Midnight Lace Obsidian, just be aware. Watch that Black Obsidian video first, because Black Obsidian alone is actually quite powerful. And I think that Midnight Lace Obsidian, from a spiritual perspective, is all of that and much more. So it's a very deep cleanser. But just remember that when it comes to Black Obsidian, and is definitely Midnight Lace as well, they're actually purifiers as well. So part of the way they purify is by bringing this subconscious to the conscious, and also eradicating the negativity that's in your aura. There's a purification there, and it's believed to shield the aura as well, which is great to know. So when you're doing things like meditating, if you're wanting to promote your own light vibration, shall we say, it's supposed to act as a shield and protection from other people distracting you. I mean, honestly, I would say just turn the phone off and put a sign up or whatever, and not have people come banging on your door when you're trying to meditate anyway. But yes, anyway, if you've got questions about this, do feel free to ask them. As far as the Akashic records go, that's just my interpretation there. I believe that if you're getting information about your divine plan, your purpose, and the pathway through life, you get that information from the records, which is in the higher realms. So from a physical perspective, I actually didn't see any attributes given to Midnight Lace Obsidian. So this slide is actually a carryover from the Black Obsidian. But what I want to mention, obviously, first off, is you do not rely totally on your crystals to manage your health, right? If you've got physical health conditions, go and see your doctor. I'm sure there won't be a problem using your crystals in conjunction with your medical treatment. But basically, buyer beware. There's a disclaimer there. There's no evidence to support the crystals work for physical health conditions. And certainly not the snake bite. I've put that up there. I'm Australian. We have a lot of poisonous snakes here, and I don't think I'd be holding off to get my crystal. Anyway, going back to the benefits of Black Obsidian, which probably carry over to the Midnight Lace, is physical detoxification. That's a purification of the body. If you've got stomach or intestinal issues, waste elimination, what have I got? They're all governed by the base or the root chakra. I'm just looking at my notes as I talk about this. And the crown, of course, is anything to do with the head, which is nervous system as well. The brain governs most of the body's function, if not all of them. So clearly that will be a benefit. What else have I got? It might be beneficial to people who've got skeletal issues, who struggle with basically mobility issues, that kind of thing. If they've got muscular problems like ligament and tendon damage, it might help to heal those. If people suffer from arthritis or paralysis, who knows? It would be worth giving it a shot, though, I guess, if you feel drawn to it, I would only say. It might actually be really helpful for people with psychosomatic pain, where that's... I'm trying to think of an example why I put that in there. It was just something that crossed my mind. I recall somewhere along the way that when people have had a limb removed or they've lost a limb, that they can still feel psychosomatic pain after the limb has gone. It's not there anymore, but there's this lingering awareness of that limb. So it might be beneficial for that. So obviously I've only just started working with Midnight Lace Obsidian, so I'm still going through the process of establishing from my perspective what the emotional attributes are. But these are the types of attributes that it's believed to work with. If you unpack all that blockage or all the pain of the past and all the rest of it, well, ideally you're going to have a different approach, different attitude to life. So this is a case of, yes, enhancing relationships, enhancing communication, learning to speak with diplomacy, kindness, consideration, because the base chakra is the foundational chakra for all the other chakras. So if we get that one nice and solid and safe and well functioning, then the rest of the chakra activity from a positive perspective is going to come into play. What I would say, though, from an emotional perspective, once again, I'll let you look at the slide yourself and look at the list. From my perspective, I think if you're mature, as in years, or if you've got a lot of trauma, as in compounding it across your life, be aware that there's going to be a transitional stage, I guess, around the emotional release to step into the positive aspects. And this is I guess, where I'm at now and why I have mixed feelings about recommending it, because I wasn't feeling, at that low ebb that we talked about before in regard to life cycles. I just was actually going okay, but I knew that I had unresolved stuff. I mean, you get to a certain age and stage in life and you know that there's a few blocks and barriers there. What I will say is that currently it's left me a little bit flat. Um, I'm going to stop working with it for now. That's going to be my decision. I'm going to pack it up and put it away today so that I can actually focus on becoming more active, becoming more energized, shall we say, proactive. Because when you're unpacking and processing, the old pain, you can actually become stuck in it a little bit. And for me, and when you become a little bit stuck, it stops you from actually doing practical things in your current existence. And so for me, it's like, okay, I've had enough thinking about that now to go on, do some physical action. I may pick up the Midnight Lace Obsidian in the next months and work with it again, and just do this over a longer period of time, I guess. Simply because, just to be clear here, I'm older. I've had a lot of trauma throughout my life, lots and lots of it, actually. I don't want to go into it in too much detail. And yeah, I just don't think that it's helpful at this point in time for me to spend a lot of time revisiting that. Having said that, I'm thinking this is a little bit of a deviation from the script here. Having said that, I would say that with the trauma, I think I described earlier, it has turned to peace, an acceptance of what has been, and a recognition that, there is obviously an underlying meaning that is more than I'm aware of right now, because we can't control everything and everybody around us. So yeah, I guess in some ways it's about changing the perspective. I can back that up. I've got to wait to see, I guess, whether or not it promotes feelings of joy and happiness. But by all means, let me know your experiences. So, as with all crystals, it's got a multitude of uses. Because we're talking about a fairly powerful crystal here, while it can be used as an ornament, say spheres, I'm not sure that I've seen it in carvings, but probably more the spheres, the palm stones, even worry stones, stuff like that, you'll find it in, I'm sure. But anyway, look, going back to it, things like the spheres, yes, they're lovely ornaments, but because they give off the ambient energy, I'm not sure that I would actually keep it in the environment because, just because it can be so strong. Probably for meditation, I'd probably be inclined to look at the spheres for holding in the palms when you're trying to meditate. You could also use the palm stones, the slivers. They have free forms. I've seen a lot of the shapes and slivers and that kind of thing that you could use when holding them. The only thing that I would say is that, yes, it would certainly be very good for doing things like grids, but once again, I think care needs to be taken if you're going to use it, because it's going to bring up all that residual stuff, shall we say, bring it to the surface for processing. Now, going back to Ilya, who has given me some tips with working with this Midnight Lace Obsidian, he has suggested and recommended that you work with it while holding another gentle crystal. And I'll just look at his notes here, where he's mentioned a milky prismatic barite crystal is helpful for activating the psychic abilities. I can't see when I look at my notes. Look, perhaps something like rose quartz, or something that helps to soothe and calm anxiety or promote forgiveness. Any of the lighter green or darker green crystals, or even the pink, are probably good ones to use with Midnight Lace Obsidian when you're trying to do this deep healing work for yourself, or doing any gridding. You can actually wear it as a talisman or an amulet as well for protection, and that could be a necklace. I don't think I've seen it as bracelets, but once again, I'm just going to do that reminder here too, that because it's got black obsidian in it, it acts as a sponge and it soaks up negativity. So you will need to do a proper cleanse if you're into the metaphysical properties. A cleanse and clear after each use would be my recommendation. please do feel free to contribute your own thoughts and experiences when using this crystal. I'd love to hear them. So I'm going to go off a transcript I did for the message here because I really reflected on it before I started recording this video today. And basically I would say that it encourages a person to get some balance in their life across all areas. And this includes setting and creating boundaries, potentially firm ones if needed. Well, especially actually if you're going to be doing the higher realm work, doing that access stuff. But don't forget that when we talk about boundaries and balancing them, that means paying attention to your own personal boundaries. Quite often, if we have no boundaries, and I've been guilty of this in the past, where, the saying, I'm an open book, ask me anything, I'll tell you anything, it's not really an issue. What happens when we have very low or no boundaries is that we often don't recognize the boundaries in other people because we don't realize some people are not quite as open and transparent. And when we cross those lines in the sand for those people, they can become very emotionally reactive. So there's an additional message too that I feel has come to me through the process of doing this video, which is basically just play the observer of your life. Try and avoid doing large emotional reactions. Instead, try and retain that balance within yourself, despite whatever triggers come up, because even though things aren't clear at the time, these disturbances may occur. Down the track, you get more clarity around it. And I firmly believe that one of the big messages of Midnight Lace Midnight Lace Obsidian, is this reminder that life is cyclical, that it's got its ebbs, it's got its flows, it's got its highs, it's got its lows. And it turns out I'm a poet, didn't know it, but there you go. But yeah, life is ins, outs, ups, downs, all over the place. And when we invest emotionally into all of these things, it can become very emotionally depleting. So I guess there's another message there too, which is don't sweat the small stuff. If whatever is happening is not going to change the face of the planet, if it's not going to be life-threatening or whatever, put it into perspective and just observe it, let it come, let it go. And one of the prayers that I got told years ago was practice gratitude, even in the face of adversity. Gratitude for blessings seen and unseen, because the blessings don't always become apparent until further down the track. So as far as caring for your crystal goes, obsidian in itself is quite a brittle material. So even though, well, I've said it's got a level of hardiness to it, some of it does, it can also shatter, if it's struck. So it's not foolproof, shall we say. We can actually damage it. And I do think that it can actually be scratched when it's placed up against harder crystals. So if I was going to do the metaphysical clearing, I wouldn't be putting it on my rough selenite logs. I use the selenite dishes, the polished selenite. I love them. I love the rulers, that kind of thing. I just find it easier. You've probably got different ways that you approach clearing and cleansing your crystals. Perhaps incense. Some people do it with sound and tuning forks and that kind of thing. So what I would recommend you do is take a look at another video. I've got the link to it in the description on alternative methods for clearing and cleansing your crystals and getting them recharged, ready for the next use. But just remember, where you've got anything with black obsidian, you need to do it regularly, okay? Basically after use. So, my friends, at this point in time, I think I've given you all the information that I can do currently around Midnight Lace Obsidian, as far as my experience and uses go. I may come back and update this at a future date to say what other experiences I observed and noticed and any changes that may have occurred. In the meantime, I'll just hand it over to you guys and wait for your feedback and comments. And for now, I'm just going to say, look, thank you very much for being part of my journey. Have a wonderful day. Stay blessed. I'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye for now.